Ask Alice. Plates.
9mm caliber, 9mm Luger, 9mm Parabellum, 9x19, whatever you want to call it, is the most popular handgun caliber almost anywhere. Except there are some people who just get a little challenged by shooting a 9mm. So they go to the 9mm short, also known as the 380 ACP, maybe in a little mouse gun like the Beretta, or maybe the Ruger LCP Max. If you want something a little bigger, there are a lot of other little guns around there. Problem is, those guns are harder to control, just because they're so much smaller. Therefore, people often will go up in size a little bit. So enter a number of guns the same size really as 9mm counterparts, but chambered in 380 or 9mm short, or 9x17 if you want to call it that. So here's one in front of us. We're going to talk about the Walther PD 380. Stay with me. All right, thanks for joining me while we take a look at the Walther PD 380. Interesting gun. I'm going to make a couple of quick comparisons here. Again, your standard little guns here, the Ruger LCP Max, maybe the Taurus, my Stormtrooper. Did a video on that a while back. The SIG 238 and its Kimber counterpart, the Micro 9. Of course, the ubiquitous Glock 42, SIG 365. Same size in 380 as it is in 9mm. And yeah, if you want a fun little 1911 Browning Black Label. Let's see, the Smith & Wesson Shield EZ for Easy Rack. A couple of problems with that personally. And one I just did a review on not that long ago is the CCP. This is the M2 or Model 2 in 380. They also make the same gun in 9mm. We're going to actually use that as a comparison point since they're both Walthers. But in the meantime, let's talk about the PD 380, Personal Defense 380 caliber. So Walther bills this as covert carry redefined. Okay, I'm not sure that it's a redefining covert carry, especially when you can go to something more like that for covert carry. Yeah, I know the color, sorry about that. So I'm not sure if it's going to be redefined or not, but that's what they call it. This is, it's not quite I guess I'd put it almost in the compact, between the subcompact and the compact line. 9mm are going to be quite similar to this. Not a real light gun. This is 24.3 ounces when it's loaded with 10 rounds, 124 grain ammunition. But you take my other Walther here, the CCP M2, also in 380. This only holds 9 rounds of ammunition total, so 8 round magazines, and this is 22.5 ounces. So really a couple ounces lighter for another gun by the same manufacturer. Right, again, so it's kind of a mid-sized type gun, and put it side by side with the other Walther offering, the CCP. Length is about the same, although the PD 380 seems to be a little bit fatter. If you look at it from the back end, it also appears to be a little bit fatter, although the grip width is really pretty close. So again, these are two comparable pistols size-wise, although again the CCP 380, and again I did a video on that a while back, is a striker-fired gun with 8 round magazines, and these magazines are the same as the 9mm, except they have a spacer in the back, because again this gun comes in both flavors, 9 and 380. But striker-fired gun that's just a hair lighter. But there are some other, I'm not going to get into all the details about the CCP. Go back and check the video out on that, you'll see the differences. We're going to be talking about the hammer-fired gun here, and for the YouTube manual reviewers, this gun is safety checked and is empty. I know that I get a lot of comments about why I have to do that. Well, again, we are supposedly influencers, and if people are watching this, then I want to make sure that they understand that if you're handling a gun, particularly in front of the camera, and I will actually have my hand in front of the muzzle occasionally, even though I've completely safety checked it, but I want to make sure that people know we're handling it in a safe environment. All right, so starting at the top, it does have, it looks like these are Glock pattern sights, and it is actually an adjustable rear sight, which is a little bit interesting, especially on something this small, but it does look Glock pattern. Typical 3-dot sights, you know my feeling on 3-dot sights, so I won't get into that. Very blocky slide, but it does have what they call super terrain serrations, and yeah, these are definitely assertive, aggressive, whatever you want to call it. And there's where this also differs from another Walther offering, the PK380, in that they don't have forward cocking serrations on it. But these are definitely aggressive. So Super Terrain, I'll go along with that. In addition, on the slide, we have a slide-mounted safety lever, and you can see when it's up in the fire position, red is showing, and when it's down, you can pull the trigger. Now, interesting that this does not prevent the hammer from falling. It only blocks the hammer so that when it does fall, in fact, let's take the safety off, you'll actually see the hammer move forward just a little bit. So there's a hammer block between the hammer and the slide itself. So you can decock it by pulling the trigger, or of course you can decock it the old-fashioned way, finger on the trigger, hang onto the hammer, press the trigger until it releases, then take your finger off the trigger before you let the hammer go all the way forward. Because again, as long as the finger's off the trigger, the hammer block is active. So a couple of different ways to decock it. But let's just see if it will decock by pressing the trigger with the safety on. Okay, so the safety is on, the hammer is back, and point it in a safe direction here downrange. And as long as the safety is on, let's pull the trigger, and the safety keeps the round from firing. So you can still see there is a round in the chamber that obviously did not fire. Once it's in double action, it has a fairly long, heavy pull. This pull runs about 7.25 pounds, fairly consistent, and it feels like a polymer trigger. And actually, there's a spring under the trigger. You can just barely see it in there. And it's kind of squared off. It does have serrations on the front, but it's not very rounded, and can be a little uncomfortable on the finger. Not terribly so, but again, I don't like the particular profile on the trigger. But you can shoot a double action. Now you can also shoot it, of course, single action. And once it gets into single action mode, the trigger runs fairly consistent, 3 pounds on this. There's a little bit of take up, fairly short press, no over travel. And yeah, there's one of the things I don't like about it. I'll talk about in just a minute. And a fair amount of reset, although it is tactile and audible, but again, you got to go quite a bit forward with it. So you saw I had to take the magazine out using the magazine release, because a problem with this gun that you don't get with many others is there is no slide stop lever on it. So that means that an empty magazine is the only thing that's holding it back, and you can't release the slide unless you slingshot it or go to the overhand, whichever way you want, but you can't use a slide release lever on this to release the magazine, which means when you put an empty magazine in and you run it back, you want to let the slide go forward, magazine's got to come out. Aggravating. I don't know why they didn't put a slide stop lever or slide release on it when the CCP 380 definitely has one, and certainly does work. Also, the CCP has a frame mounted safety, which is a lot more intuitive, a lot easier to use. Now, a lot of people are going to carry this in double action mode, so they won't worry about the safety so much. Problem with that is, if you have a gun with a safety, even if you don't use the safety, you still have to train by flipping that safety off every single time. Even if you don't use it, go through the motions to flip that off, because if this inadvertently gets bumped into the safe position and you have to depend on it and you're not used to flipping that safety off, you basically have a brick in your hand. So that's not an intuitive safety, and just not a big fan of it. But this is a fairly slim magazine, and you compare this, of course, with the magazine out of the CCP 380. Again, the CCP was designed as a 9mm originally, with a spacer in the back to make it a 380. So therefore the magazine is longer front to rear, but they're also the same height. And the CCP 380 holds 8 rounds, and the PD 380 holds 9 rounds in the same size or same height of magazine. It does have a polymer follower as opposed to just the metal follower in the CCP, but again, I haven't noticed any difference in how they function. 3.7-inch barrel, pretty typical of this class. Of course, I have a built-in feed ramp. Can't see that real well because it's dirty, because I've shot it a lot. And it comes with 2 of those 9-round magazines. And the texture is also interesting. Now, I love Walther ergonomics. I really do. This gun feels so nice in the hand. It's got what they call the performance duty texture. Now, again, on their website, they say this is for unparalleled control. Well, I'm sorry. That's marketing, I guess. Yeah, it does feel good. It's not going to move around in the hand. The texture is not real rough, but it is grippy, and I accept nothing on the front of the grip. And I do like to get front traction on it. Again, that's where there's a difference between that and the CCP. Is again, you get better traction on the front, but the CCP has a bare spot up here, which I don't like. You got more traction up here on the PD 380. So again, a lot of differences, but Walther ergonomics, man, he's just really, really, really hard to beat him. So I did spend some time on the range with this gun and shooting a variety of 380 ammunition, including my hand loads, which are kind of powder puff loads, and also the some regular standard velocity type ammunition. And I even put some defensive ammunition through it. The, 90 grain Speer Gold Dot, and it functioned just fine. Yeah, the question on little 380s always comes up, will it run defensive ammo? This is Speer Gold Dot. And the plates. And the answer is Speer Gold Dot. It runs them. Of course, I'm hitting everything I need to at 12 yards 25. I'll have to admit I struggled just a little bit. And again, I think it was just on a day that it was me more than anything else. When I got back to 50 yards, the performance in my hands with the PD 380 wasn't any different significantly than it was when I shot the CCP 380. I know they're not 50-yard guns, but I got to try them there. Did struggle a little bit. I think I got down to the 10-inch plate and didn't really get any smaller. Certainly couldn't get the 6-inch plate with it, but again, I think that's probably more me than it is the gun. Though at 380 at that distance, yeah, it's hard to say. So if you're looking for something that's fairly easy to control and relatively easy to rack. Now with the hammer down, it does take just I gotta take the mag out. It does take a little more effort than if the hammer is up, because otherwise you've got the resistance of the hammer when you cock it. But it's not all that difficult to rack, and certainly not. In fact, I think, if anything, the slide action on the CCP, even though it's a striker-fired gun, not a hammer-fired gun, I think the slides are just a little bit easier to rack, and certainly the trigger is nicer on the CCP. Any easier than the Shield Easy? Shield 380 EZ might be a little bit easier to rack, but not an awful lot. Now, certainly it is easier than some of the smaller guns, even easier than the SIG 365. But again, it's a little bigger gun than the 365 with less capacity, so it means it's easier to hang on to, a little less easy to covertly carry. Certainly not covert carry reimagined. So there's my take on the PD 380. Would I give that up in favor of would I take it over the CCP 380? And the CCP 380 is about $100 less expensive, has a nicer feeling trigger. Does have one fewer round, okay, but it's a little bit lighter, a little easier to rack. There are a couple of issues with the long trigger on it, but on the other hand, I like the shooting of how the CCP 380 shoots. For me, in general, at least how it feels when I shoot. It's no more accurate, but I like how it feels when I shoot the CCP as opposed to the PD 380. Would I spend an extra $100 to get the super terrain cocking serrations and maybe a little better grip texture, except on the front of the grip? Something with no magazine release and a slide mounted safety? Nope. Hard pass. Nice gun if you like that sort of thing, but I think there are better options out there. So that's it. My take on the Walther PD 380. Thanks for dropping in.